Always remember, your focus determines your reality.
In time, you will learn to trust your feelings. Then you will be invincible.
The greatest teacher, failure is.
Peace is a lie. There is only passion.
May the Force be with us all.
Before there was a republic, there was only gravity, pulling fractured worlds toward each other until they either fused or shattered. The galaxy after the fall of the infinite empire didn't feel like freedom at first. It felt like abandonment. Hyperlanes still burned bright across the stars, but there was no hand guiding traffic through them anymore. No single authority, no shared law, just systems waking up from slavery and immediately realizing that independence is not the same thing as stability. That is where the Unification Wars begin. Not with a declaration, with panic. On Coruscant, the surface was already drowning in itself. City-states stacked on city-states, governance fracturing vertically instead of horizontally. One level above you could be a completely different law, a different army, a different definition of citizen. Coruscant was not a capital yet. It was a question nobody had agreed how to answer. Above it all, the core worlds watched. Corellia, Alderaan, Duro, each one emerging from the collapse of the infinite empire with something to prove and something to protect. Trade routes were no longer just pathways. They were lifelines, and whoever controlled them controlled survival. At first, it wasn't war. It was consolidation. Small systems forming protective blocks. Defense pacts that quietly became economic unions. Economic unions that quietly became militarized borders. And somewhere in that slow, tightening spiral, someone fired the first shot that could not be diplomatically erased. The galaxy doesn't remember who fired it, only that after it, nothing stayed local anymore. This is where the first key figures emerge, not as mythic heroes, but as necessary accidents of history. On Corellia, early proto-republic organizers began pushing something radical for its time. Shared governance between systems that still considered each other rivals. Corellia did not want to rule the galaxy. It wanted to survive it. And survival, they realized, required coordination.
Law must be the shield that guards our peace, not a weapon of war.
I agree, but restraint requires absolute adherence to our Constitution.
Across the core, on Alderaan, another philosophy formed. Not expansion, but restraint. If Corellia was about building the spine of a future government, Alderaan was about making sure that spine did not become a weapon. Their diplomats began shaping early constitutional frameworks.
This alliance will secure peace for generations.
The fleet is ready for launch.
Insisting that unity without limits would simply become another empire wearing a softer mask. And then there was Coruscant. Coruscant did not lead in ideology. It led in inevitability. Its position in the galactic network made it a convergence point, not chosen, selected by geometry. Every major route eventually intersected its gravity well. Whoever controlled Coruscant did not just control a world. They controlled the pause between systems. But Coruscant was not unified internally. Not yet. Its own city layers were still governed by competing authorities, megacorporate enclaves, and localized military regimes. So when the idea of it becoming a capital first appeared, it sounded less like politics and more like a threat. The wars escalated as these philosophies collided. Corellian expansionists pushing for stronger integration of nearby systems. Alderaanian blocs resisting anything that resembled domination. Industrial worlds like Duro caught in between, supplying fleets to whichever side kept their lanes open longest. And in the middle of it all, something else began to move quietly. The Jedi. Not yet the fully formed order that would later serve the Republic, but a scattered tradition of force-sensitive mediators who had survived the collapse of the infinite empire.
There has been enough killing. Let us find another way.
And refused to become conquerors in its absence. They did not command armies. They walked into ones already burning. Their role in the Unification Wars was not to win battles, but to prevent every disagreement from becoming permanent. There are records, incomplete and inconsistent, of Jedi stepping into negotiations that had already collapsed into orbital bombardment threats, of standing between fleets not as generals, but as interruptions, not always successful, sometimes too late, but often just early enough to change the shape of what came after. And that shape began to settle, because something fundamental started to change in the thinking of the core worlds. Unity stopped being seen as conquest. It started being seen as infrastructure, not the expansion of power, but the stabilization of it. The idea that a galaxy without shared systems would forever be rebuilding itself from collapse. This is the quiet turning point of the Unification Wars. Not a single treaty, not a final battle, but a realization spreading unevenly across dozens of governments. We are already connected. We are just pretending we are not. Coruscant's eventual elevation to capital status was not coronation. It was recognition. Its hyperlane centrality, its population density, its layered governance chaos, all of it made it the only place large enough to hold every contradiction at once. When the early Galactic Constitution finally formed, it was not the product of agreement so much as exhaustion refined into structure. The Unification Wars did not end because every faction agreed on what the galaxy should be. They ended because enough of them agreed on what it should not collapse into again. And from that fragile consensus, the Galactic Republic was born. Not perfect, not finished, just unified enough to continue existing. And in the quiet aftermath, as fleets stood down and borders softened into administration, the galaxy learned its first real lesson. Unity is not peace. It is maintenance, constant, uneven, necessary. And it always starts right after everything else stops working. If this holocron stirred something, if it made you question what the Force truly shows, subscribe. More Kybercrons are already open. Forgotten knowledge, buried truths, and echoes the Jedi tried to silence. You'll find them waiting in the playlist on your screen. And now, the archive turns to you. If there's a lost truth, a question, or a shadow in the lore you want uncovered next, leave it in the comments below. Every Kybercron begins as a fragment, and some of the strongest fragments come from those who listen closely. If your idea becomes the next episode, your name will be entered into the archive and spoken aloud. But when that Kybercron is opened, knowledge is meant to be shared until the next Kybercron is unsealed and another truth is brought into the light. This is Jalen Tross, Keeper of the Kybercrons, signing